Welcome to the Overlooked Motel, a place where underseen and unappreciated films are given their moment in the spotlight. I've come dangerously close to profiling the surreal, supernatural horror film The Sentinel on the Overlooked Motel several times previously, and every time I've decided against it because the flick does have a cult following. However, it doesn't have nearly the same recognition of contemporaries like The Omen or The Exorcist. Moreover, it was critically panned upon release, and I would actually argue that it's severely underrated for such an atmospheric and intense horror thriller. So on that basis, I've decided to show it some love here. The Sentinel follows Allison, a high-fashion model with a thriving career and a partner with whom she is quite enamored. But Allison has never really been on her own. As such, she's determined to try living independently. With that in mind, Allison finds the perfect place, an apartment in a vintage building with gorgeous views of the New York skyline. But there's a problem with her new space. Her fellow tenants are prone to rather colorful behavior and don't seem to have any concept of boundaries. As her neighbors become more and more sinister, Allison begins to unravel. Growing increasingly weary, she struggles to discern the cause of the bizarre goings-on in her new home before she's driven to the brink of insanity. The film features an all-star cast and a sympathetic protagonist in Allison. In addition to Christina Rains as the lead character, the flick features appearances by Chris Sarandon as Allison's boyfriend, Christopher Walken as a detective, Burgess Meredith as an eccentric neighbor, Beverly D'Angelo as an even more eccentric neighbor, Jeff Goldblum as a fashion photographer, and John Carradine as a man of the cloth. That's easily one of the most impressive lineups for a horror picture of this era. Casting aside, the film also has a fascinating storyline. I don't want to get too deep into exactly what Allison is facing off against because it would spoil some of the twists and turns for the uninducted viewer, but suffice to say she's battling a supernatural evil that desperately wants to drive her to a dark place. Further accentuating the ordeal, no one seems to take her claims seriously, and that makes her ultimately begin to question her own experience. The film gets progressively more intense as Allison is driven deeper and deeper into despair, culminating in an absolutely unforgettable Day Now May. When I said that Allison's fellow tenants are prone to colorful behavior, I was not joking. That setup leads to some truly awkward encounters. The sequence where Allison's neighbor Sandra fondles her groin in ecstasy is one of the most uncomfortable scenes ever committed to celluloid. It works to create an air of discomfort and leaves me in a state where I'm torn between feeling terribly sorry for Allison and wanting to break into a fit of maniacal laughter. Though the urge to chuckle usually wins out, the exchange does plenty to set the stage for the disturbing and strange developments still to come. Not to mention, the entire ordeal serves to establish a sense of discomfort and tension. Between the bizarre encounters with her neighbors, having her claims discounted by those around her, and the lack of a strong support system, Allison is rendered quite vulnerable, and that serves to make her a rather sympathetic protagonist. And that vulnerability makes the terrifying ordeal in which she finds herself intertwined even more harrowing for the viewer. While the entire film is a mixture of shocking and bizarre occurrences, the real pièce de résistance is the ending. It's a surreal and harrowing conclusion that leaves me asking myself what the hell I just watched. I've seen The Sentinel multiple times, yet the finale never ceases to render me speechless. It's a lot to take in a good way, but keep that in mind on your inaugural viewing because it's quite the experience. All in, The Sentinel is a star-studded affair with an ominous tone and a twisty narrative. If you're interested in checking the film out, it can be had as a digital rental from all the major retailers, or you can grab a copy on disc. Scream Factory previously put the flick out on physical media with a crisp transfer and some nice bonus content. That's all for this installment of the Overlooked Motel. If you want to chat more about underseen and underrated films, feel free to hit me up with your thoughts on Twitter @FunWithHorror.